But it's no surprise, is it, that net migration to the UK is expected to hit a record high of 700,000 later this week, piling even more pressure on Rishi Sunak to regain control of Britain's borders. Some joke, that is. The expected rise could well open him up to attacks from the right wing of his party, particularly after he sacked Suella Braverman and the Rwanda plan was blocked in the courts last week. To talk about this and much more, I'm joined by Deputy Leader of Reform UK and former MEP himself, Ben Habib, and human rights lawyer, David Haigh. Ben, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Good evening.
Hard to believe, isn't it, that some are going, oh, that's a bit of a surprise, because we've been told by the lefty lawyers for about the last 12 months that, oh, the only reason that net migration is so high is because of Ukraine, because of Hong Kong.
Yeah, lockdowns. We had a backup of people who wanted to come here, and all of a sudden they came.
I mean, I did a story with Migration Watch just a week or two ago, where they said, you know, by the next 10 years, we'll need about another 15 Birminghams with the number of people who are coming in. And that was all poo-pooed by the lefties, saying, oh, no, you've got the figures all wrong. Well, apparently we haven't got the figures all wrong, because more people are now coming legally and staying longer, which is what I've always suspected, than ever.
Well, you know, 2 years ago we had, well, for years under the Conservative government, we had 300,000 people a year, net migration.
Yes.
2 years ago we had 500,000. That was the first kind of head above the parapet on what was, you know, to come later. Last year we had 600,000 net. This year they're saying 700,000. You add that all together, you're talking about 2 or 3 million over the last 4 or 5 years.
Right.
That is 3 cities the size of Manchester.
Yes.
All needing to be housed, all needing medical care, all needing infrastructure, schools and so on.
Right.
No wonder the public services are under pressure. And yet they say we need migration in order to alleviate the strains in our labour market. Well, there are 6.2 million people claiming universal credit to a greater or lesser extent, not in the labour market because it doesn't pay to work. We've been taxed to hell. Jeremy Hunt, for the first time, by the way, has acknowledged that cutting taxes would grow the economy. He said, this is going to be
It's funny how they've now got the money. They've found it somehow.
I know. As soon as there's some electoral pressure, they find the money.
Yeah.
But as you rightly said in your brilliant exposition, if I may say,
Thank you.
You went across all the problems we're facing pretty much as a country. We needed to cut taxes for years.
Yes.
And if we had cut taxes, Mike, we would have the working and middle classes fully deployed. There would not be 6.1 million people on universal credit. That would alleviate the need for migration, effectively unskilled labour coming into the United Kingdom. And if we didn't have the migration that we've got, we wouldn't have the pressures on the housing market, the health service, the infrastructure,
the roads,
the schools, the roads, and so on. And it's a virtuous circle. Cut taxation, get businesses working properly, get people back into work, and lo and behold, the United Kingdom operates brilliantly.
And we could go back to the way it used to be, not that many years ago, actually, because I say that this has all been turbocharged in the last kind of 5 years, it seems to me. I mean, you and I have known each other probably as long as that. And when this whole sort of Brexit debate started after the referendum, and because it didn't stop after the referendum, say 2017, 2018, you know, we didn't have anything like the migration problem that we have now.
No,
now,
but we did think it was bad then. It was
bad.
It
was bad then.
Doubled,
but now we're being told by those who are saying, oh, don't worry, the ones who think that migration is a good thing, oh, don't worry, it's going to go back down to about 300,000 a year. I mean, that's, you know, that's 3 million massive. In 10 years.
Yeah, and let's not forget, when they talk about 300,000 net or 500,000 net, they're saying net.
Yeah.
Gross figures are much higher. Last year, 1.1 million new people of different ethnic backgrounds came to the United Kingdom. And the other issue here, which we haven't discussed, which I absolutely must discuss, is the multicultural silos in which the United Kingdom is now operating.
Yes.
And we've seen that manifested recently in the marches, what I would call the anti-Israeli marches on our streets, which actually had a subtext of anti-Britishness about them. And, you know, we're going to end up in a kind of tinderbox of ethnic minorities in the United Kingdom. Not the kind of multiculturalism we would like, where you get a manageable amount of migration with values being shared, a homogeneous new set of values being created in the country moving forward in harmony. What we're going to get is lots of different cultures operating in silos, not ethnically mixing. And like France, when that Algerian chap was shot earlier this year, do you remember, by the French police? France went up a light, but from Marseille all the way to Calais, France was a light with inter-ethnic violence. And we don't want that in the United Kingdom. There's a very sinister side to multiculturalism in the way that we're practicing it. It needs to be called out. Suella Braverman did her best.
Yeah.
Rishi Sunak,
And look what happened to her.
Yeah, Rishi Sunak sacked her for doing that. And, you know, we've really got to get a grip of this problem. And the economy, our culture, the way we view our history, all of these things are tied up together. As I mentioned, if you cut taxes, you need less migration because you get British people working. If you get the economic machine moving forward, you have less pressure on the public services. The economy grows. If the economy grows, the Exchequer gets more money. If the Exchequer gets more money, it stops taxing us. And we get liberated economically and we aspire. We cease to be dependent and we aspire. And we become a growing, positive, proud, independent, moving forward, United Kingdom.
A bit like we used to be.
A bit like we used to be.
David, let me bring David Haigh, a human rights lawyer. David, sorry to keep you waiting there, but Ben's very excited about this. He always is, and so am I. But it's true, isn't it? We seem to have now kind of changed the nature of our immigration. You know, I was born and raised in London. I went and lived in New York for 10 years. You know, I'm familiar with multicultural cities. I love them. I think they're great. But something's changed. You know, people who went to New York always went there to become New Yorkers. People who came to Britain wanted to come to Britain because they respected the country. They looked up to Britain. Now they come to Britain because of soft touch. And they think we can just go there and nobody's going to bother us.
Good evening. Good evening to you both. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you've just said, and obviously what Ben has said. And you know, I think one thing that when you look at the government, one thing that they've certainly managed to achieve is that they've not done anything in terms of protecting human rights. They've done nothing in terms of genuine asylum seekers, and in terms of protecting the borders and businesses, they've also failed there. So that's the one thing they've achieved, is failing for everybody. And then at the same time, taking us, the British people, I think, for fools, because they're weaponising the spectre of someone coming across on a boat, when the real figures and the real concern that I think we need to be looking at are legal migration and the issues there. Because they're bigger numbers than people that are in the backlog as well. So I think, you know, it's certainly not a very it's a terrible situation.
Yeah, and the reason for the number going up, unlike what we were told it would do by those lawyers who thought that, you know, this was just a bump in the road because of Ukraine and because of Hong Kong, the reason they're going up is that workers who are coming here on workers' visas are asking to stay longer, which was always my suspicion, because, you know, we know, for example, that there's a lot of people coming here on student visas who are basically not really coming to study, they're coming to live, and we know that they're bringing dependents with them, and the whole system just seems to be like a sieve. Nobody's really got their eye on it. Nobody really knows who's coming in. I'm told the Home Office actually banned applications for business studies courses from Bangladesh because there were so many people coming that they couldn't quite believe their eyes.
I mean, I think Ben said it very well when he said about getting a grip, and I think the government has shown that they're not capable of doing that. And a long time ago, when I was a trainee solicitor, even then there were student visa English language scams that were going on then, and that's some time ago, and it's only got worse and worse and worse. And then when you look at how the figures of the figures we're expecting to come out in a day or so, it even looks like they're cooking the books there, because the figures have been kind of recalculated in terms of how student visas are looked at. And all of this, you know, from a human rights perspective, all of this is from one side, but from a human rights perspective, it's also making the genuine asylum seekers villainized, and it's harming the genuine people that need our help. And there are some genuine people that definitely need our help and that should be coming here. And so the government really needs to get a grip, and all they've proven is that they're incapable of doing that.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? It's not just the Home Office, Ben, but we know the Home Office who have made a specific kind of effort to stop government policy. We saw last week that piece in the Telegraph that Stephen Edgington managed to get from an insider at the Home Office who said,
Wasn't that revealing?
Just incredible. Where they said basically they're not interested in carrying out government policy. Anything that tries to prevent migration will be stamped upon. We also know, for example, that we've got, apart from the current terrorist sort of enclave that we're trying to track around Britain that has disappeared, there's 3 of them apparently, there's about 50 prior terrorists, known terrorists who are in the country who can't be deported because of their human rights. And you just go, what?
Yeah,
what?
Your head explodes,
yeah,
doesn't it? With absolute sort of irritation.
Yeah.
But, you know, the other interesting thing here is that the biggest form of illegal migration comes through legal migration. People who have visas come here, and you've kind of touched on it. You know, they come here with visas and they never leave.
Right.
And we haven't got the wherewithal or inclination to track them, find out who they are, and deport them. And they'd be the easiest to deport.
You would think.
They've got
because we know who these guys are.
You think you know who they are, and they've got no legitimate reason to be here. They've got no complaint about their home country. They came here from a peaceable country, presumably, to which they can go back.
Yeah.
But, you know, our systems are broken. We have a government that is basically inept.
Yeah.
And, as you say, the civil service, I think we're standing throughout her time as Home Secretary, Priti Patel, in opposition to her. And then when Suella Braverman was Home Secretary, they were standing in opposition to her.
Right.
And they, as you rightly said again, Mike, they will not stop migration.
No.
They're wed to it. I think they see it as some kind of virtuous... a virtuous step for the United Kingdom to be all-embracing of all cultures. But what they don't realise is these cultures come from very different backgrounds, very different values. They often hold our values in contempt.
Right. And also, they're not coming here to take what the best of Britain is and to enjoy it and to wave the flag. I mean, you were saying earlier about the Palestinian marches.
I call them the anti-Israeli marches.
Anti-Israeli marches. Anybody seen wearing a poppy in those marches?
No.
Because they have no care for our traditions, no care for our history.
And climbing all over our war memorials. Why would you do that? Why would you desecrate British war memorials in a ostensibly pro-Palestinian march? There's something else going on here.
Yeah.
And this is my biggest concern. And so, again, Suella Braverman made this very clear in her speech in Washington, that this country and indeed Western democracies face an existential threat from unbridled migration, both legal and illegal.
Yeah.
And it's going to hollow us out. We're not going to be a nation state. What is a nation state? A nation state is a shared language, a shared culture, a shared history.
A shared heritage, yeah.
A shared heritage, a shared sense of belonging.
Yes.
And that is being eroded. And we've got to call it out before it gets to a point where we're no longer calling it out, but we're facing the threat to which Suella Braverman was pointing.
Yeah, I think that has to be said. I'm joined now by Conservative MP Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown. Delighted to have you on the show, Sir Geoffrey. Can't believe it's taken us this long
Mike.
to get you on the new turbocharged Independent Republic, which is on from 9 to 11 now, instead of 10 to 1 in the morning. It's true, isn't it? I mean, I think, you know, there are many problems facing the Tory party coming up to the next election, but you can't really get away from the migration, whether it's legal, illegal, people staying too long, people coming who shouldn't come, people coming and then getting lost in the system. You know, I reckon, and I say this as a genuine friend of the Tory party, you know, I'm not a Tory, but I will always support the Tory party as long as they do Tory things. At the end of the day, this is the problem that you have to fix. If you fix it, you might even win.
I agree with that. It's amazing how widespread across the country people care about this issue. And you might say, well, in the Cotswolds, which is as far away from some of the ports of entry as anywhere, that people wouldn't be interested, but they jolly well are. And so I do agree with you. We've got to fix it. We've got to find a way of reducing the number of people who come into this country, and above all, actually be able to have a system where the country can make a choice of whether somebody is entitled to come in here and, as your correspondent was saying, enjoy the benefits of this country. It should be our country that makes these decisions. But at the moment, it's all sorts of the European Court, the Convention on Refugees, and all sorts of external factors determine who comes in here, and that's not right.
Yeah. Although it was the Supreme Court this time around that actually said that it was unlawful to send people to Rwanda. So as much as people can go, the ECHR is to blame, you know, the European Union is to blame, all of which may be true. In this particular instance, at the moment, it's the Supreme Court.
That's true, but we are now about to pass emergency legislation, and we will have to try and get that legislation so that it is Parliament who is making the decisions on these matters, not the courts, not the European Court, not our own court, not the Convention on Refugees. It should be Parliament that makes these decisions, and our party, our Parliament, should be making a decision to make it much tougher to come in here.
Well, I mean, a lot of people thought that Parliament was the final arbiter of these things until the Supreme Court stuck its bleeding oar in. But let's talk to David Haigh, who's a lawyer. David, tell us from your experience of the law, will it make any difference? And if it will make a difference, what emergency legislation is passed, then why the hell didn't they do it earlier?
I think, I don't think we can be blaming the European Court on this one at the moment. I mean, Lord Reed from is not French, he's British. It's a British court that done this, and the law that they were referring to, it was Tony Blair's government that brought the European Court, the European legislation in human rights into British law. This is British law at the moment. So I think it's very easy to blame European courts and again try and weaponize that, but that's not the issue that we've got here. We need to, I think, look at the real problems of the figures in terms of the legal migration and the numbers in the backlog. And so I think, and that's, I think, what we need to tackle. And so far, the Conservative government have proven they have been in power for 13 years. They've shown that they're completely incapable of doing that. And they're taking the British people for fools. And at the same time, like I said, that actually harms the genuine asylum seekers and the people that need our help.
It really does. Ben, I mean, do you have any faith in a change of the law in terms of legislation? Because nothing else has worked.
Well, this is on illegal migration. I mean, you only need to change the law or pass laws for dealing with illegal migration if you see its control through deportation. But the point I've been making for many years, as you know, Mike, is that deportation is what you do when border control has failed.
Yes.
The problem is we've got no border control. Border Force doesn't seek even to try to stop these boats. The Navy has given up on the Channel. The Channel used to be a mechanism by which the United Kingdom was protected from assault by Europe.
Right.
And now it's become
by people in boats.
By people in boats,
yeah.
All the way back to 1588. And now it's become our Achilles heel because we don't have the political will to challenge those people who have willfully entered dinghies, I was going to say set sail, they're not setting sail, they're going under motor from France to our British territorial waters. They make the 12.5-mile journey, and then we don't have the courage to stop them and say, please go back to France. But I want to make another point to Sir Geoffrey, if I may, which is that it's all well and good talking about illegal migration, which of course must be nil, but the net legal migration, of which we have as a country complete control, is, as it appears to be, out of control. And that's because the skill-based immigration system that was adopted by Pretty is being implemented based on a base salary of £26,000 a year. That is about 25% less than the median wage in the UK. So we are, instead of importing skilled labour or skills that we lack in the United Kingdom, which would help our economy, which might be contributory at a high intellectual level to the United Kingdom, we're actually just inculcating a third world economic model in a first world country. And that, Sir Geoffrey, if I may point this question to you, is entirely in your government's control. But it seems that the Conservative Party is not willing or able to take control of what it has all the legislation in place to do.
Sir Geoffrey.
Well, there are a number of points there. First thing is that if you've got to start deporting somebody, the system has failed because they shouldn't have come here in the first place. And as you say, that revolves around cutting down the number of boats coming into this country. And before we get too pessimistic, there have been some successes. 80% odd of the Albanians are going back because we've got a repatriation agreement. Whether we like it or not, France is stopping some of the migrants, but there's a long way to go. And what you're saying is basically we need to get our systems right. The whole of our systems are far too complicated. It takes too long. Some of the poor Home Office people trying to adjudicate on these claims for to remain here, they only do one a day because the system is so complicated. We need to simplify them. We need to get enough people doing these assessments. There's still a backlog of 70 or 80,000 people out there waiting to see whether their claim is going to remain in this country is going to be upheld or not. We need to do that. And as you say, we need this economic test to be at a more realistic level so that the people we want in this country, the point I was making earlier, are the people that we need to be here, the people who are actually going to benefit our country and benefit our economy. Yes. And I entirely agree with that.
But we've had many Home Secretaries, haven't we, Sir Geoffrey, who have promised that they're going to be the one that fixes it. And there's a reason why they can't fix it. It's the bloody Home Office, isn't it? And I'm perfectly willing to give the government a bit of slack up to a point. But I don't know whether Boris Johnson really believed in stopping immigration. I don't think he did. I think Rishi Sunak would like to, but I don't think he knows how. But the real problem, surely, is the Home Office, which is not fit for purpose and should be ripped asunder and set up again with people who know what they're doing.
Well, Mike, you're absolutely right. And you use the phrase not fit for purpose. If you remember, it was the Labour Home Secretary, John Reid, in the 90s, who said the Home Office is not fit for purpose. So what I would do with the Home Office is I would split it into two. I would split off the immigration bit from the sort of crime and all the rest of it and get somebody in charge of the crime bit and look at the legislation, look at our systems and try and see if we can make it work. And I do accept the criticism. We've been in power and we've presided over a system where the number of people legally coming to this country has got greater and greater. Having said one thing about the figures this year, we have taken in quite a large number of Ukrainians and we have taken in quite a large number of Hong Kong overseas nationals. And I think that probably most people would have said that that was the right thing to do. But without that, the rest of the legal migration coming into this country is too high.
Exactly right, and it's going up, and that's the problem, because they're all staying for longer than they should. But listen, Sir Geoffrey, Clifton-Brown, good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us. Ben Habib, thank you as well. David Haigh, let me give you the final word. I mean, is there any way that you can see that before the next election, even if it's in May or whether it's in October of next year, I have to ask you to be quick on this, any way you see the boats being stopped?
In short, no. I think it's going to get worse. That's as short as I get it. It's going to get worse.
No, listen, I mean, I appreciate your candour. Thank you very much indeed. It drives you insane, doesn't it? How can we have had all of these Home Secretaries doing all of these things, promising all of this stuff, and not only has it not worked, it's got bloody worse?